The keycard was silver and unremarkable, the kind you'd find in any hotel across America. I discovered it while searching through Rachel's coat pocket for her car keys. She'd asked me to move her vehicle so I could get mine out of the garage. After 15 years of marriage, going through her pockets wasn't an invasion of privacy. It was just practical household logistics. "Found them," I called out, jingling the keys as I walked back into the kitchen where Rachel was finishing her morning coffee. The Hilton keycard caught the light as I set it on the counter. "This too? From your Denver conference?" Rachel glanced at it with the practiced ease of someone who traveled constantly for her defense contracting job. "Oh, that old thing?" "Yeah, from the Aerospace Systems Conference 3 months ago. I keep meaning to toss it, but you know how I am with receipts and expense reports." I did know. Rachel's home office contained color-coded binders of every business trip she'd taken in the last 5 years. Her attention to detail matched my own military precision. It was one of the things that had drawn us together when we'd met at a joint Navy contractor briefing years ago. "The one where you presented on the new guidance system protocols?" I asked, sliding the keycard toward her. "That's the one." 3 days of technical specifications and security clearance verifications. Thompson from Lockheed was there. Asked about you, actually. I told him you were deployed. She smiled. That familiar expression that still made something in my chest tighten even after all these years. "He said to tell you the submarine community misses your security briefings." I returned her smile, already thinking ahead to my morning schedule at the naval base. 23 years in submarine security had taught me to compartmentalize. Home was home, work was work, and the classified nature of my position meant the two rarely intersected except through Rachel's cleared contractor status. "I'll be late tonight," I said, grabbing my coffee. "New security protocols for the Virginia-class boats. Admiral Stevens wants a complete review by end of week." "Another late night at the office," Rachel said, and something in her tone made me look up. "Seems like we're both pulling long hours lately." "Part of the job," I replied, kissing her forehead. "Your sacrifice is noted and appreciated, Mrs. Garrison." She laughed, the sound filling our kitchen with warmth. "Get out of here, Commander. Go protect our nuclear secrets." I pocketed her keys and headed for the garage, my mind already shifting to the day's security assessments. The morning sun caught the Hilton keycard still sitting on the counter, and I made a mental note to grab it for her expense files when I got home. That was Tuesday. By Thursday, my world had shifted on its axis, though I didn't know it yet. The revelation came through mundane curiosity rather than suspicion. I was in my home office that evening, reviewing classification protocols, when I noticed the keycard on my desk. Rachel must have left it there after I'd found it. The Denver Hilton logo was clearly visible, and something about it nagged at me. Not suspicion, just the kind of detail-oriented itch that came from 2 decades of security verification procedures. I pulled up my calendar to check the dates of Rachel's Denver trip. March 15th to 18th, the aerospace conference she'd mentioned. The expense reports would be in her files, but something simpler occurred to me. Hotel keycards had dates encoded in their magnetic strips, a security feature most people didn't know about. My laptop had a magnetic reader, a tool of the trade for security verification work. The reader beeped and data scrolled across my screen. My coffee mug stopped halfway to my lips. The keycard had been programmed 2 days ago. Tuesday afternoon, 2:47 p.m. The Hilton address wasn't in Denver. It was 14 miles from our house. Training kicked in before emotion could. In submarine security, we called it verification protocol. When data doesn't match the narrative, you verify before you act. Assumption was the enemy of operational security. I set down my coffee with deliberate calm and pulled up Rachel's company calendar, which she shared with me for scheduling purposes. Tuesday afternoon showed client meeting, Raytheon Systems Review. A quick check of Raytheon's corporate directory showed no systems review scheduled for that date. Their next contractor meeting was 3 weeks out. The urge to confront her immediately pressed against my ribs, but 23 years of military discipline held it in check. In the submarine service, we had a saying, trust but verify, then verify again. Incomplete intelligence led to catastrophic failures. I needed more information. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. Working late again tonight. These procurement specs are killing me. Don't wait up. Love you. I stared at the message, then at the keycard data on my screen. The hotel was a 15-minute drive. Every instinct screamed to drive there now, but that would be emotional reaction, not strategic response. Instead, I opened a new document and began what we called in the service a threat assessment matrix. Known facts. Keycard programmed Tuesday. Local hotel, not Denver. Rachel's explanation contained false information. Raytheon meeting didn't exist. Unknown variables. Why the deception? Who was she meeting? How long had this been happening? I approached it like any security breach, methodically, comprehensively, without letting emotion compromise operational effectiveness. The next morning, I called the hotel. Not as an angry husband, but as Commander Garrison conducting a security verification. Hilton Rewards Desk. This is Amanda. Good morning, Amanda. This is Commander Garrison with Naval Security Group. I'm conducting a routine security clearance renewal for one of our contractors, and I need to verify some travel dates. The contractor is Rachel Garrison. That's Golf Alpha Romeo, Romeo India, Sierra Oscar November. Of course, Commander. Let me pull that up for you. Can you verify the last four of the social for security purposes? I provided the information, hearing Amanda's keyboard clicking through the phone. I show, miss. Garrison has been a frequent guest. What dates did you need to verify? Let's start with all stays in the last 3 months. Certainly. I show 8 stays in the last 3 months. Would you like the specific dates? 8. My hand tightened on the phone, but my voice remained steady. Please? Amanda read off the dates. Everyone corresponded to Rachel's supposed late nights at the office or client dinners. Tuesday afternoons, Thursday evenings, 2 Saturday emergency procurement reviews. Thank you, Amanda. One more thing. Are these stays typically single or double occupancy? Let me check. They're all registered as single occupancy, but I should note that wouldn't necessarily reflect visitors, only registered guests. Understood. This has been very helpful for our security review. I ended the call and sat back in my office chair, staring at the data I'd compiled. In submarine operations, we called this running silent, the moment when you cut engines and listen, gathering intelligence before choosing your angle of attack. Rachel had been meeting someone at that hotel 8 times in 3 months. The pattern was established, deliberate, and sophisticated in its deception. This wasn't a momentary lapse or single mistake. This was an operation. My phone rang. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Blake from the base. Jim, you missed the 0800 briefing. Everything all right? I looked at my watch. 0837. In 23 years of service, I'd never missed a scheduled briefing. Family emergency, I said. I'll need to reschedule. Of course. Anything I can help with? Negative, I'll handle it. But I could hear the concern in Blake's voice. Missing briefings, calling them family emergencies. These were red flags in our community. Security clearance holders exhibiting unusual behavior triggered automatic reviews. I needed to compartmentalize better. Whatever was happening with Rachel couldn't compromise my professional standing. My clearance, my career, the trust of my command, all of it required absolute operational discipline. That evening, I told Rachel I had night security drills and would be bunking at the base. She kissed me goodbye with what seemed like genuine affection, reminded me about our dinner plans with her sister on Sunday, and went back to her laptop. Instead of driving to base, I positioned myself in a rental car near the Hilton at 1900 hours. Rachel's Audi pulled into the parking lot at 1923. A man was waiting for her at the entrance. Even from a distance, his bearing was unmistakably military. The posture, the haircut, the way he scanned the parking lot before they entered together. I knew that vigilance. It was operational security. He was checking for surveillance. I photographed them with my phone's zoom, the image grainy but clear enough. They were comfortable together, his hand on her lower back, her laugh carrying across the evening air. The same laugh that had filled our kitchen just days ago. Running facial recognition through military databases would be a violation of protocol for personal use. But I didn't need to. As they passed under the entrance lights, I recognized him. Colonel Marcus Webb, Army Intelligence. I'd seen his name on Rachel's project files from a joint military contractor initiative 18 months ago. He'd been stationed at Fort Meade then, but a quick check of military transfer records showed he'd been reassigned to our region 6 months ago. The pieces clicked into place with military precision. The timeline, the opportunity, the sophisticated deception using operational security techniques. Webb wasn't just having an affair with my wife, he was running it like an intelligence operation. I sat in that rental car for 3 hours, engine off, watching their third-floor room light. In submarine warfare, patience was a weapon. You waited for the perfect angle, the optimal firing solution. Rushing led to missed targets and exposed positions. At 2:24:7, they emerged. Another kiss in the doorway, longer this time. Webb walked her to her car, checked her surroundings again, that operational vigilance, and watched her drive away before returning to the hotel. I followed neither of them. Instead, I drove to an all-night diner and opened my laptop, beginning the kind of comprehensive intelligence gathering that had made me one of the Navy's top security officers. Marcus Webb, 48 years old. Divorced twice. Intelligence specialist with commendations for operational planning in Afghanistan and Iraq. Currently assigned to Joint Task Force operations at the local military installation. Security clearance. Top secret/sensitive compartmented information. His service record was impressive but showed patterns. Both divorces involved infidelity. A sealed reprimand from 7 years ago. The details classified, but the timing corresponded with an investigation into inappropriate relationships with female subordinates. He was using his intelligence training to conduct the affair, but he'd left traces in the system. Hotel records, credit card receipts, even parking garage timestamps. All the digital breadcrumbs that someone with my security access could follow. By 0400, I had constructed what we called a pattern of life analysis. Webb and Rachel had been meeting for exactly 6 months, starting 2 weeks after his transfer to our area. The hotels varied initially, operational security to avoid patterns, but they'd grown comfortable, complacent. The last 2 months had been exclusively the Hilton. Their meetings followed Rachel's work schedule, but also Webb's operational tempo. When he had field exercises or classified briefings, no meetings. When Rachel had legitimate travel, no meetings. They were synchronizing their deception across both their professional calendars. I closed my laptop as the sun rose, exhaustion pulling at my eyes but my mind crystal clear. In submarine warfare, once you had the firing solution, you had 3 options: immediate attack, delayed strategic strike, or silent running to gather more intelligence. Immediate attack meant confronting them now. Emotional, satisfying, but tactically weak. Delayed strategic strike meant planning a comprehensive response that destroyed not just the affair, but the entire operational structure supporting it. Silent running meant watching, waiting, gathering intelligence until the perfect moment. 23 years of military discipline made the choice clear. I returned home, showered, and made breakfast. Rachel came down in her robe, kissed my cheek, and commented on my early morning energy. "Good drills last night," she asked, pouring coffee. "Highly productive," I replied. "Identified several security vulnerabilities we need to address." She smiled, no tell whatsoever in her expression. "You and your security protocols. Sometimes I think you see threats everywhere." "Occupational hazard," I said, returning her smile. "Better to see threats that aren't there than miss ones that are." "I suppose." "Oh, I have a client dinner tonight. The Raytheon Systems review got moved up. Probably be late." "On a Friday?" "You know how these contractors are. They want their updates before the weekend." She was already moving toward the stairs. "I'll try not to wake you when I get in." I watched her go, noting the casual confidence of her deception. She'd had 6 months to perfect the routine, to believe her operational security was flawless. That confidence would be her vulnerability. At the base, Lieutenant Commander Blake cornered me after the morning briefing. "Jim, what's going on?" "You've been distracted all week. That's not like you." Sarah Blake was sharp. 5 years my junior, but rapidly rising through naval intelligence ranks. We'd worked together on several classified operations, and she could read operational tempo like sheet music. Personal situation, I said carefully. Nothing that affects my clearance or operational capability. She studied me with those intelligence officer eyes, cataloging details. You sure? Because Admiral Stevens asked about you yesterday. Said you seemed off during the Tuesday brief. The Tuesday brief. The day I'd found the key card. I'd thought I'd hidden my distraction, but nothing escaped Stevens. I'll handle it, I said. Jim. Her voice dropped. We've worked together long enough. If you need help, operational or otherwise, you know I'm here. Noted and appreciated. But she didn't move. You're running an op, aren't you? Something personal but using operational resources. I said nothing, which was answer enough for someone with Blake's training. Be careful, she said finally. Personal operations have a way of compromising professional ones, and your clearance won't survive if you cross certain lines. She was right, of course. Using military resources for personal intelligence gathering was a violation that could end my career. But Webb had crossed the line first, using his operational training to conduct an affair with a cleared defense contractor. That made it a security matter, not just a personal one. That afternoon, I submitted a routine security inquiry on Colonel Marcus Webb through official channels. Not an investigation, that would require cause, but a standard verification for Joint Task Force operations. It was completely within protocols, the kind of query that crossed my desk dozen times a week. The response came back within hours, and buried in the routine data was gold. Webb had been flagged for a previous security review 4 years ago. The details were sealed, but the reviewing officer was listed. Colonel Patricia Hendricks, now Brigadier General Hendricks at the Pentagon. I knew Pat Hendricks. We'd worked together on submarine security protocols for special operations. She owed me a favor from when I'd helped clear one of her officers from a bogus security violation. The call was brief and carefully worded. Pat, Jim Garrison. Jim. How's the submarine world treating you? Can't complain. Listen, I'm doing a security review for joint operations, and Colonel Marcus Webb came up. I see you reviewed him 4 years ago. Anything I should know for operational security purposes? A pause. In our world, pauses meant calculation. What could be said, what couldn't, what should be. Officially, his review was closed with no action. And unofficially? Let's just say I wouldn't put him in any position involving female subordinates or contractors. The man has a pattern, Jim. Uses his intelligence training for personal operations. We couldn't prove anything actionable, but where there's smoke, roger that. Appreciate the insight. Jim, if he's in your operational sphere, watch him closely. He's smart, trained, and completely lacking in ethical boundaries when it comes to personal conquests. After the call, I sat in my office staring at Webb's service photo on my screen. He wasn't just having an affair with Rachel. This was his pattern, his operational method. Intelligence training applied to seduction, security protocols used for deception. Rachel thought she was special. She thought this was love, passion, something missing from our marriage. She didn't realize she was just another operation for Webb, another conquest using the same tactics he'd deployed before. The knowledge should have made me feel better. My wife was a victim, not just a willing participant. But it didn't. She'd still chosen deception over communication, still chosen another man over our marriage, still betrayed 15 years of trust. That evening, I watched her prepare for her client dinner. She wore the black dress I'd bought her for our anniversary 2 years ago, the one that made her legs look endless. Her perfume was new, something I didn't recognize. You look beautiful, I said from the doorway. She turned, surprised. Thank you. Just trying to look professional for the clients. Of course. I moved into the room, close enough to smell that unfamiliar perfume. Rachel, you know you can talk to me about anything, right? If something's wrong, if you're unhappy? For a moment, her mask slipped. I saw fear, guilt, maybe even regret flash across her features. Then, the operational security kicked back in. Everything's fine, Jim. Just stressed with work. These defense contracts are getting more complex. I know, I love you. Whatever happens, remember that. She kissed me then, soft and lingering, like she used to years ago. I love you too. but she still left for her client dinner. I gave her a 15-minute head start, then drove to the hotel. Not to confront, but to observe. In intelligence gathering, emotional state was crucial data. Were they celebrating? Planning? Was this routine or special? Through the lobby windows, I could see them at the bar. Webb's body language was possessive, arm around her waist, leaning in close, the kind of territorial display that marked ownership. Rachel was laughing, her hand on his chest, but something in her posture seemed forced. Then Webb's hand moved to her face, tilting it up, and they kissed. Not passionate, but casual, comfortable. The kiss of people who'd been doing this for months, who'd moved past the urgent phase into something resembling relationship routine. I documented it with photos, adding to my intelligence file. Evidence for the divorce, yes, but more importantly, data on their operational pattern. Webb was getting comfortable, sloppy. His intelligence training was being overridden by ego and routine. My phone buzzed. Blake. Jim, where are you? Stevens called an emergency briefing. I checked my watch. 2,000 hours on a Friday meant something significant. On my way. I took one last photo of Webb and Rachel, now moving toward the elevators, then drove to base. The briefing was about new Chinese submarine detection capabilities, requiring immediate updates to our security protocols. For 2 hours, I pushed everything else aside, focusing entirely on the threat assessment. This was what I was trained for, what I excelled at. Personal crisis couldn't compromise professional duty. After the briefing, Stevens pulled me aside. Jim, you good? You seem distracted lately. Admiral Stevens had been my commanding officer for 5 years. He'd seen me through deployments, security crises, and countless classified operations. Lying to him wasn't just wrong, it was impossible. Personal situation, sir. I'm handling it. He studied me with those submarine commander eyes that had spotted enemy vessels in absolute darkness. Affecting your clearance? Negative, sir. Need time off? Negative. Work helps. He nodded slowly. Jim, I've known you long enough to trust your judgment. But if this personal situation starts affecting operational capability? It won't, sir. Good. Because I'm recommending you for the new security directorship. Can't have my best officer compromised by personal drama. Security directorship. The position I'd worked toward for a decade. More responsibility, better pay, and Rachel had always said she wanted me to advance beyond field operations. The irony wasn't lost on me. I got home after midnight. Rachel's car was in the garage, her shoes by the door, that new perfume lingering in the hallway. She was asleep, or pretending to be, when I slipped into bed. In the darkness, I could hear her breathing. After 15 years, I knew every pattern of her sleep, every tell of her consciousness. She was awake, lying perfectly still, maintaining her own operational security even in our bed. Saturday morning brought the dance of normalcy. Weekend breakfast, discussion of yard work, plans for the upcoming week. Rachel mentioned having to work Sunday afternoon, procurement deadline, and I nodded sympathetically. Actually, I said, refilling our coffee, I've been thinking about us. Her hand stilled on her mug. Oh, we've been so busy lately. Both of us working constantly, ships passing in the night. When's the last time we took a real vacation? Relief flooded her features. God, you're right. It's been forever. After your current project wraps up, let's go somewhere. Just us. Maybe Hawaii? You always wanted to see Pearl Harbor. That sounds wonderful. Her smile seemed genuine. I'd love that. Good. It's important to remember what we're working for, you know? All these long hours, the stress, the time apart. It's supposed to be building something, not tearing it down. She reached across the table and took my hand. You're right. I've been so caught up in work, I've forgotten what's important. For a moment, I wanted to believe her. Wanted to think this was her way of saying the affair was ending, that she was choosing us. But intelligence training had taught me the difference between hope and analysis. I'm going to the base gym, I said. Want to come? I should probably review those procurement specs. Rain check? At the gym, I pushed myself through a punishing workout, each rep burning away the urge to simply confront her. That would be the civilian response, the emotional reaction. But I wasn't just a husband. I was a naval officer with clearance to some of the nation's most sensitive secrets. My response had to be measured, strategic, and completely above reproach. Blake was there, running on the treadmill. She nodded to the machine next to her. "Didn't expect to see you here on a Saturday," she said. "Needed to clear my head." We ran in silence for a while, the rhythm of our footfalls creating a meditation of sorts. "You know," Blake said eventually, "when I was at intelligence school, they taught us about operational overlap, when personal and professional operations intersect. They said it was the most dangerous kind of mission because you can't maintain objectivity." I remember that course. They also said sometimes it's unavoidable. Sometimes the personal becomes professional by necessity. I glanced at her. Blake stared straight ahead, her expression neutral. "Hypothetically," she continued, "if someone with security clearance was conducting activities that could compromise operational security, that would be a professional matter, not personal. Hypothetically. And if investigating such activities happened to reveal personal information, that would be an unfortunate but necessary consequence of protecting operational security. You're walking a fine line, Blake." She stopped running, turned to face me. "So are you, Jim. Just make sure when you cross it, you're on the right side." That afternoon, I expanded my intelligence gathering. Webb's credit card records, accessible through security verification protocols, showed a pattern of purchases that lined up with his meetings with Rachel. Expensive dinners at restaurants Rachel had mentioned. Theater tickets for shows she'd said she'd attended with work friends. A jewelry purchase from 2 months ago. I checked Rachel's jewelry box. A new tennis bracelet I hadn't seen before, hidden beneath older pieces. She'd worn it last week, claiming it was an early bonus from a completed contract. The web of deception was intricate but traceable. Each lie connected to another, creating a pattern that, once identified, revealed the entire operation. Sunday arrived with Rachel's predicted procurement deadline. She left at noon, promising to be back for dinner. I waited 30 minutes, then accessed her laptop. She'd left it open, logged in, a security violation in itself for someone with her clearance level. Her email showed nothing suspicious. She was too smart for that. But her calendar had a subtle tell. The procurement reviews were marked as recurring appointments, but the metadata showed they'd been created all at once 6 months ago. Someone had built a false schedule in advance, providing cover for regular meetings. Her browser history was cleared, but recovery software pulled up fragments. Hotel booking sites, lingerie retailers, articles about rekindling passion in marriage. That last one dated from 7 months ago, before Webb's transfer. So she'd been unhappy before he arrived. Webb hadn't destroyed our marriage. He'd simply exploited existing vulnerabilities. Like any good intelligence officer, he'd identified a target's weakness and leveraged it. The sound of a car in the driveway sent me back to my office. Not Rachel's Audi, a black SUV with government plates. Webb, he didn't get out, just waited. 30 seconds later, Rachel emerged from our house. She'd come in through the back door while I was in my office. She carried an overnight bag, moving quickly to the SUV. I photographed everything through my office window, watching my wife get into another man's vehicle with a bag she'd packed in our home. The casualness of it, the routine, told me everything. This wasn't new or exciting anymore. This was their normal. They drove away, and I sat in my office chair, staring at the photos on my screen. In submarine warfare, this was called the point of no return, when you'd committed to the attack and couldn't recall the torpedo. I opened a new document and began typing. Security Assessment. Colonel Marcus Webb and Rachel Garrison. Potential compromise of classified information through personal relationship. The report was clinical, professional, focused entirely on the security implications of an Army intelligence officer conducting an affair with a cleared defense contractor. I documented the deception techniques, the operational security measures, the potential for classified information to be shared during intimate moments. I didn't submit it. Not yet. First, I needed one more piece of evidence, something that would make this unquestionably a security matter rather than personal vendetta. Monday morning, I requested a meeting with our base security officer, Captain Reynolds. He was old-school Navy, someone who understood that security clearance came with responsibilities beyond the workplace. Tom, hypothetical question, I began after the pleasantries. If a cleared contractor was in an undisclosed relationship with military intelligence personnel, what would be the security implications? Reynolds leaned back, his expression thoughtful. Depends on the nature of the relationship and whether it was disclosed. Unrepresented relationships between cleared individuals can create vulnerabilities, blackmail, inadvertent disclosure, divided loyalties. And if the relationship involved deception, hidden from spouses, commands, security officers, then you're looking at immediate clearance review for both parties. The deception itself demonstrates willingness to hide significant information from security personnel. That's a red flag that can't be ignored. Even if no classified information was compromised. Jim, the potential for compromise is enough. We can't wait for actual breaches. If someone's willing to lie about a relationship, what else are they willing to lie about? Thanks, Tom. Helpful perspective. He studied me carefully. This isn't hypothetical, is it? At this point, it is. But it might not stay that way. Jim, if you have knowledge of a security concern, you're obligated to report it. Personal feelings aside, I'm aware of my obligations. That evening, Rachel came home late, full of apologies about the extended procurement review. She seemed tired, distracted, and for the first time, I saw signs of stress in her deception. The lies were wearing on her. Everything okay? I asked, pouring her a wine. Just complicated negotiations. You know how these contractors can be. I do. Secrets and clearances and everyone trying to protect their interests. She looked at me sharply, then relaxed. Exactly. Sometimes I wish we could just be honest about everything, put all cards on the table. That would make things simpler, I agreed. But then, our entire careers are built on managing classified information. We're trained to keep secrets. From enemies and adversaries, she said, not from people we love. Is there a difference? In terms of operational security? She set down her wine. Jim, what's this about? Nothing specific. Just thinking about the nature of our work. We're both cleared for information that could damage national security if revealed. That's a heavy responsibility. It is. Her voice was quiet. Sometimes I wonder if it's worth it. The clearance? The whole life. The secrets, the protocols, the constant vigilance. Don't you ever want to just be normal? Normal people don't get to serve their country at our level. It's a privilege that comes with sacrifice. She laughed, but it was bitter, spoken like a true military man. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. I'm just tired. She stood, taking her wine. I'm going to review some documents before bed. Tuesday brought a breakthrough. While reviewing security logs for routine base access, I noticed Webb had accessed files related to submarine detection systems, files outside his normal purview, but within his clearance level. The access corresponded to dates of Rachel's company's bid on a submarine countermeasures contract. It could be coincidence. Or it could be Webb using his access to help Rachel's company with their bid, a clear violation of security protocols and potentially criminal. I documented everything, adding it to my growing file. The pattern was becoming clear. Webb wasn't just seducing my wife, he was potentially using their relationship for professional gain. That afternoon, Blake found me in the Secure Communications Center. Jim, we need to talk. Her expression was serious, professional. She led me to a secure conference room, engaged the electronic countermeasures, and faced me. I've been monitoring unusual access patterns in our classified systems. Colonel Webb has been pulling files that don't align with his operational requirements. My pulse quickened, but I kept my expression neutral. What kind of files? Submarine capabilities, detection countermeasures, things that would be valuable to defense contractors bidding on Navy contracts. She paused. Files that would be particularly valuable to Garrison Defense Solutions. Rachel's company. You think Webb is feeding classified information to contractors? I think Webb is accessing information outside his operational need, and that requires investigation. Jim, I know this is personal for you, but how long have you known? She sighed. About Webb and Rachel? I suspected when you started your family emergency behaviors. Confirmed it when I saw Webb's access patterns correlating with Rachel's contract bids. Jim, this isn't just an affair. This is potential espionage. The word hung in the air between us. Espionage. Not just betrayal of marriage, but betrayal of country. What do you recommend? I asked. Official investigation, FBI counterintelligence, Naval Criminal Investigative Service, the whole apparatus. Webb and Rachel both lose their clearances pending investigation, possible criminal charges if classified information was actually transferred. And if it wasn't? If it was just suspicious access? Then they still lose their clearances for the undisclosed relationship and deception. Jim, I'm sorry, but this is beyond personal now. This is national security. I nodded slowly. I have documentation. 6 months of surveillance, financial records, pattern of life analysis. Blake's eyes widened slightly. You've been running a full intelligence operation. I've been protecting national security by investigating suspicious behavior. Jim, that's a very fine line. But I haven't crossed it. Everything I've gathered was through legitimate security protocols or public information. I haven't violated any classification or privacy regulations. And Rachel? Does she know you know? Negative. Operational security maintained throughout. Blake was quiet for a moment. You're going to destroy her. She destroyed us first. I'm just documenting the damage. This will end her career. Criminal investigation, loss of clearance, possible jail time if information was transferred. I'm aware. And you're okay with that? I thought about 15 years of marriage, of trust given and betrayed, of lies told with kisses and smiles. She made her choice. Webb made his. Now they face the consequences. Blake nodded. I'll prepare the formal report. You'll need to recuse yourself from the investigation due to personal involvement. Understood. Jim, I'm sorry. This isn't how anyone wants these things to end. No, I agreed. But it's how they have to end when national security is involved. That evening was surreal. Rachel and I had dinner together, discussed weekend plans, watched a movie on the couch. She curled against me like she had in our early years, her head on my shoulder, her hand on my chest. For those hours, we could pretend everything was normal. Jim, she said as the credits rolled, are you happy? That's a complex question. No, it's not. Are you happy with our life, our marriage, us? I considered my words carefully. I'm satisfied with my service, my career, my contribution to national security. Personal happiness is secondary to duty. She pulled away slightly. That's not an answer about us, isn't it? We're both cleared professionals. Our duty shapes everything, including our marriage. That's depressing. That's reality. We chose this life, Rachel. Clearances, secrets, protocols. They're not just our jobs, they're who we are. Maybe that's the problem, she said quietly. Maybe it is. Wednesday morning, the investigation officially began. FBI counterintelligence agents arrived at the base at 0700, discreetly, professionally. Blake and I presented our findings in a secure briefing room to a team that included NCIS, FBI, and Army Criminal Investigation Division. The evidence was overwhelming when laid out comprehensively. Webb's suspicious access patterns, the correlation with Rachel's contract bids, the hidden relationship, the elaborate deception protocols. Whether or not classified information had been transferred, the security violations were clear and multiple. We'll need to move simultaneously, the lead FBI agent said. Secure all devices, prevent destruction of evidence, interview both parties separately. When? I asked. This afternoon. We'll take Colonel Webb at his office, Ms. Garrison at hers. Commander Garrison, you'll need to be elsewhere when your wife is detained. Understood. We'll also need to secure your residence, search for any classified materials or evidence of information transfer. I nodded. Our home would become a crime scene. The life we'd built would be dissected by investigators looking for evidence of betrayal deeper than marital infidelity. At 1400, I was in Admiral Stevens's office when the call came. Rachel had been detained at her office, her electronics seized, her security clearance immediately suspended pending investigation. Webb had been arrested at his desk, led out in handcuffs in front of his subordinates. "Jim," Stevens said after I hung up, "I'm sorry it came to this. It was inevitable once the security violations were identified. That's not what I mean. I'm sorry about your marriage. That was over 6 months ago, sir. I just didn't know it yet." My phone rang. Rachel, calling from her one permitted call. "Jim!" Her voice was panicked, desperate. "They arrested me. The FBI is saying something about espionage and Webb. Jim, what's happening? You're being investigated for security violations related to your undisclosed relationship with Colonel Webb and suspicious access of classified materials." Silence. Then, quietly, "You knew." "I'm a security officer, Rachel. It's my job to know." "You turned me in? Your own wife?" "I reported security violations that happened to involve my wife. The distinction matters." "Jim, please, this is insane. It was just, we never shared classified information. It was personal, not professional. The investigation will determine that. If you're telling the truth, you'll only lose your clearance and career, not your freedom." "Only?" Her voice broke. "Jim, my career is everything." "No, Rachel. It was everything. You chose to risk it for Webb. That's on you, not me. I made a mistake. You made 6 months of mistakes. Calculated, deliberate, operationally planned mistakes. This isn't a single error in judgment. It's a pattern of deception that compromised security protocols. Jim, I love you. No, you don't. People don't deceive people they love for 6 months. They don't lie, manipulate, and betray. Whatever you felt for me, it wasn't love. It's more complicated than that. Actually, it's quite simple. You chose Webb over me, chose deception over honesty, chose personal gratification over professional responsibility. Now you face the consequences." "Jim, please." I hung up. The next weeks were a blur of investigations, interviews, and legal proceedings. The house was searched thoroughly. Every electronic device analyzed, every document scrutinized. The investigators found Webb's gifts to Rachel: jewelry, lingerie, even a burner phone they'd used for communication. The burner phone was the smoking gun. Not for classified information, they'd been too smart for that, but for the scope of their deception. Messages planning their meetings, discussing their cover stories, even laughing about how oblivious their respective spouses were. One message from Webb stood out. "Your husband's security briefing this morning means we have all afternoon." The Admiral's emergency protocols are the perfect cover. They'd been using my classified schedule, shared with Rachel for family planning, to coordinate their affair. That alone was a security violation that would end her clearance permanently. The investigation revealed that Webb had accessed classified submarine files, but couldn't prove he'd shared them with Rachel. Her company's bids did show unusual accuracy regarding Navy requirements, but that could have been legitimate research. Without proof of actual information transfer, espionage charges wouldn't stick. But the security violations were enough. Webb faced court-martial for conduct unbecoming an officer, misuse of classified access, and maintaining an undisclosed relationship with a cleared contractor. His career was over, his pension forfeit, his reputation destroyed. Rachel lost her clearance immediately, which meant she couldn't work on any defense contracts. Her company released her within a week, a liability they couldn't afford. Without clearance, she was unemployable in the defense sector she'd spent 15 years building her career in. The divorce was straightforward. Military efficiency applied to ending a marriage. With the evidence of adultery documented by federal investigators, Rachel had no leverage. She got the minimum required by state law, nothing more. She tried to contact me repeatedly, leaving messages that cycled through anger, bargaining, depression, and occasionally acceptance. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say that hadn't been said in investigation rooms and legal documents. Webb's court-martial was a brief but brutal affair. The prosecution presented him as a serial predator who used his intelligence training to seduce women and his security access for personal gain. His previous sealed reprimands were unsealed, revealing a pattern of inappropriate relationships spanning a decade. He was reduced in rank, forfeit all pay and allowances, and dismissed from service. No jail time, the espionage charges couldn't be proven. But his military career was dead, his reputation buried with it. Rachel attended the court-martial. I saw her in the gallery, watching her lover's destruction, perhaps finally understanding that she'd been not his first victim but merely his latest. Webb never looked at her, never acknowledged her presence. She was no longer useful to him, therefore no longer relevant. After the verdict, she approached me outside the courthouse. Jim. She looked older, diminished. The confidence that had carried her through 6 months of deception was gone, replaced by something hollow. Rachel. I wanted to say, I'm sorry, not just for the affair, but for everything that came after. I never meant for it to go this far. Intentions are irrelevant. Actions have consequences. I know that now. She paused. Webb told me things about the submarine program, about your work. I never used it, never put it in our bids, but he told me things. Why are you telling me this? Because the investigators think I'm lying when I say I didn't use the information. But you know me, Jim. Whatever else I did, I wouldn't betray my country. You betrayed your clearance, your marriage, and your integrity. Why should I believe you wouldn't betray your country? Because you know me. I thought I did. I was wrong. She was quiet for a moment. What happens to you now? I continue my service. Admiral Stevens is recommending me for the security directorship despite the personal complications. My handling of the situation, maintaining operational security despite personal compromise, apparently demonstrated exceptional professionalism. So you win. Nobody wins when security is compromised. I just lose less than you and Webb. Do you feel anything? She asked. Satisfaction? Vindication? Anything? I considered the question. I feel secure. The threat has been identified, contained, and neutralized. That's what I'm trained to feel. That's not human, Jim. No, it's military. It's what allowed me to serve my country while you were serving yourself. She flinched. I loved him. No, you loved what he represented. Excitement, passion, freedom from the protocols that define our lives. But Webb wasn't free. He was using different protocols, intelligence protocols, to manipulate you. You traded one set of rules for another, and his were designed to deceive you. Maybe. But for 6 months, I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. And now? Now I feel nothing. No clearance, no career, no marriage, no future in the only field I've ever known. Webb won't even return my calls. His lawyer says any contact could compromise his appeal. You knew the risks. I thought I did. I thought the worst that could happen was divorce, maybe some professional embarrassment. I never imagined this. That's because you thought like a civilian. Webb thought like an intelligence officer. And I thought like a security officer. You were the only one not treating this as an operation. Is that what our marriage was to you? An operation? No. Our marriage was a partnership built on trust and shared service. You turned it into an operation the moment you chose deception over communication. A black car pulled up, her ride. She turned to go, then looked back. For what it's worth, Jim, I did love you. Maybe not the way you needed, maybe not enough to resist Webb, but I loved you. For what it's worth, Rachel, that's worth nothing now. She got in the car and disappeared from my life. 6 months later, I stood in Admiral Stevens's office, taking the oath for my new position as Director of Submarine Security Operations. The promotion came with increased responsibility, better pay, and a workload that would consume most waking hours. Lieutenant Commander Blake, now Commander Blake, would be my deputy. She'd proven herself during the investigation, maintaining absolute professionalism while helping destroy the careers of 2 people she'd known personally. Congratulations, Director Garrison, Stevens said after the brief ceremony. You've earned this. Thank you, sir. Jim, off the record. How are you doing? Personally? I'm operational, sir. That's not what I asked. I considered my words. I sleep well knowing our security is uncompromised. I wake with purpose knowing our enemies, foreign and domestic, face serious obstacles. If that's not happiness, it's at least satisfaction. And loneliness is preferable to betrayal, sir. He studied me. Blake's a good officer. The best, sir. She also understands the demands of service, the necessary sacrifices, the balance between personal and professional. Are you suggesting something, Admiral? I'm suggesting that not everyone would betray your trust, Jim. Some people understand honor, duty, and loyalty. Don't let one person's betrayal blind you to the possibility of genuine partnership. Noted, sir. But as I left his office, I knew the truth. Rachel's betrayal hadn't just ended our marriage, it had fundamentally altered my ability to trust. Every smile now carried potential deception, every kind word possible manipulation. The operational paranoia that served me well professionally had infected the personal. Blake was waiting outside, holding a tablet with our first security briefings as the new directorship team. Ready to get to work, Director? Always, Commander. We walked toward the secure briefing room, our steps synchronized from years of military precision. Blake was brilliant, dedicated, and absolutely trustworthy in professional matters. But Stephen's suggestion, the possibility of something more, that required a vulnerability I no longer possessed. Jim, Blake said as we reached the briefing room. I know the last year has been hell, but you handled it with more grace and professionalism than anyone could expect. That took incredible strength. It took training, not strength. No. She stopped, faced me. It took both. Webb and Rachel, they had training too. But when tested, they failed. You didn't. That's character, not just capability. Thank you, Commander. Sarah, she corrected. When it's just us, I'm Sarah. Sarah, I repeated, testing the informality. We make a good team, Jim. Professional, efficient, dedicated to the mission. Agreed. But even good teams need to occasionally remember they're human. Dinner tonight? Not a date, just two officers decompressing after a long week? I hesitated. 6 months of solitude had been safe, predictable, secure, but also hollow. One condition, I said. No discussion of security protocols, clearances, or classified materials. She smiled. What else would we talk about? I suppose we'll find out. That evening, over steaks and wine at a restaurant nowhere near the base, we discovered we could discuss books, movies, hiking trails, and a dozen other topics that had nothing to do with submarine security or classified operations. Blake, Sarah, laughed easily, told stories about her childhood in Oregon, and revealed a passion for astronomy that had nothing to do with satellite surveillance. You know, she said as we walked to our cars, Webb thought he was running a sophisticated operation, but he forgot the most basic rule of intelligence work, which is, never underestimate your opposition. He saw you as just a cuckolded husband, not a security officer. Rachel saw you as predictable and rigid, not methodical and patient. They both underestimated you. And you? I see you exactly as you are, brilliant, wounded, cautious, and probably the most competent security officer in the Navy. I also see someone who deserves better than what he got. That's a lot of seeing. It's my job. Intelligence officer, remember? This isn't an operation, Sarah. No, she agreed. It's just dinner between colleagues who might eventually become friends. Maybe more, maybe not. But honest, straightforward, no deception or operational security required. That sounds terrifying? I was going to say refreshing, she smiled. Same time next week? I'll check my security briefing schedule. Jim, I'm going to make you a promise. I will never lie to you about anything. If I'm unhappy, I'll say so. If I'm attracted to someone else, I'll tell you before acting on it. If I need something you're not providing, I'll communicate directly. No operations, no deception, no betrayal. That's a significant promise. Yes, it is. Can you make the same one? I thought about it. Yes. Then we have a foundation to build on. Everything else is just details. As I watched her drive away, I realized something had shifted. The walls I'd built weren't coming down. That would take time, maybe years. But for the first time since finding that hotel keycard, I could imagine them eventually becoming unnecessary. A year later, Webb was dishonorably discharged after his appeal failed. He moved across the country, his name poisoned in military and intelligence circles. Rachel found work in civilian project management, making a fraction of her former salary, her security violations following her like a scarlet letter in background checks. Sarah and I continued our weekly dinners, gradually expanding to weekend hikes, movie nights, eventually partnership in ways that had nothing to do with security protocols. She kept her promise, absolute honesty, even when it was uncomfortable. In return, I slowly learned to trust again, not completely, not blindly, but enough. The investigation had revealed one final detail that I'd never shared with anyone except Sarah. In Webb's personal files, they'd found records of 7 other women over the past decade, all following the same pattern: military or contractor, security clearance, married or committed, vulnerable to his particular brand of intelligent manipulation. Rachel wasn't special, she was just the most recent. When I finally told Sarah this, she asked, "Does knowing that help?" It confirms that the threat was real, the pattern established, the security response justified. That's not what I meant. Does it help personally? Knowing Rachel was manipulated rather than purely choosing betrayal? No, I admitted, because she still chose. Even if Webb manipulated her, she chose deception over communication, him over us, excitement over integrity. The manipulation might explain the how, but it doesn't change the what. Fair enough. 2 years after the keycard discovery, I stood in Arlington National Cemetery for Admiral Stevens's retirement ceremony. Full military honors, decades of service recognized, a legacy of protected secrets and defended freedom. Rachel was there, surprisingly. Stevens had been her military sponsor when she'd first received her clearance, and despite everything, he'd maintained cordial relations with her. She looked better than she had at the court-martial, steadier, perhaps accepting her new reality. We nodded to each other across the ceremony grounds, acknowledgement without interaction. After the ceremony, Stevens approached me. "Jim, walk with me." We strolled among the headstones, thousands of service members who'd given everything for their country. "You know," Stevens said, "in 40 years of service, I've seen every kind of betrayal: enemy agents, double agents, friendly fire, and yes, marital infidelity. You know what I learned? Sir, the mission continues. Personal drama, heartbreak, betrayal, they're all temporary. The mission, the service, the protection of our nation, that's permanent. You embodied that principle during your crisis. You put mission before personal, duty before emotion. That's why you're going to be an exceptional director." "Thank you, sir." "But Jim?" He stopped, faced me. "Don't forget to be human too. The mission needs officers, yes, but it needs human officers, ones who understand what they're protecting and why it matters." "I understand, sir." "Do you?" "Because from where I stand, you survived Rachel's betrayal by becoming more machine than man. Efficient, certainly. Effective, absolutely. But also isolated, calculating, perhaps even cold." "It's safer, sir." "Safety and life aren't the same thing, son. Rachel took your marriage, but don't let her take your humanity. That would be the real victory for someone like Webb, turning good officers into emotional casualties who can function professionally but never personally recover." That night, Sarah and I had dinner at our usual place. I told her about Stephen's words, about seeing Rachel, about the strange feeling of observing my ex-wife from across a cemetery, fitting symbolism for our dead marriage. "He's right, you know," Sarah said. "You've been functioning, not living." "I'm living. Just carefully. Jim, I've been patient. 2 years of dinners, hikes, movies. 2 years of building trust one grain at a time. And I'll keep being patient if that's what you need. But at some point, you have to decide whether you're going to let Rachel and Webb define your capacity for connection forever." "It's not that simple. Actually, it is. They betrayed you. That's fact, history, unchangeable. But whether that betrayal continues to control your future, that's a choice you make every day. I trusted completely once. Look how that ended. You trusted blindly once. There's a difference between complete trust and blind trust. One is earned and verified, The other is assumed and unexamined. Sounds like an intelligence briefing. Maybe. Or maybe it sounds like someone who's done her own verification protocols on you for 2 years and found you worth the investment. I looked at her across the table. Commander Sarah Blake, brilliant intelligence officer, patient friend, potential partner. She'd never pushed, never demanded, never manipulated, just remained steady, honest, available. Sarah, My phone rang. The emergency tone. Garrison. Director, we have a situation. Chinese submarine detected in restricted waters. We need you at the base immediately. On my way. I stood, apologetic. Sarah? Go. Duty calls. We'll continue this later. But later didn't come for 3 weeks. The Chinese submarine incident escalated into a major security crisis, requiring round-the-clock operations, diplomatic navigation, and every ounce of my expertise. Sarah was there throughout, professional, brilliant, essential to our response. When the crisis finally resolved, we'd prevented what could have been an international incident. Commendations were issued, careers advanced, and American submarine secrets remained protected. At the debrief, I watched Sarah handle the Admiralty with poise and expertise. She was everything Rachel had pretended to be, genuinely dedicated to service, uncompromisingly honest, professionally excellent without personal agenda. Director Garrison, she said formally as the briefing concluded, excellent work. Likewise, Commander Blake. But as everyone filed out, she lingered. Still owe me the end of that conversation, she said quietly. Tonight, usual place? Actually, I have a better idea. My apartment. I'll cook. You bring wine. No uniforms, no ranks, no protocols. Just Jim and Sarah figuring out if there's something beyond the professional. It was a significant escalation, a move from public neutral spaces to private personal territory. The security officer in me cataloged the risks, vulnerability, exposure, potential compromise. But Stephen's words echoed, safety and life aren't the same thing. What time? 1900 hours, she smiled. Sorry, 7 p.m. See? I can be civilian when necessary. That evening, standing outside her apartment door, holding a bottle of wine, I felt more nervous than I had during submarine infiltration exercises. This wasn't about operational security or professional duty. This was personal, vulnerable, human. Sarah opened the door wearing jeans and a sweater, the first time I'd seen her out of uniform in 2 years. You came, she said. Did you doubt? Honestly, 50-50 odds. The professional Jim would absolutely come. The personal Jim might have found a security crisis to handle instead. No crisis tonight, just dinner. Her apartment was neat but lived in, photos of family on the walls, books beyond military manuals on the shelves, a telescope by the window pointing toward the stars. You really do love astronomy, I said, since I was a kid. Before I learned to look for threats, I looked for wonder. And now I do both. The universe is beautiful and dangerous. Ignoring either aspect would be foolish. Over dinner, salmon she'd cooked perfectly, salad, and conversation that ranged from childhood memories to future dreams, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before finding that keycard. Possibility. Can I ask you something? Sarah said as we moved to her couch with wine. Always. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't found the keycard? If Rachel and Webb had been more careful? Occasionally. And they would have gotten sloppy eventually. Operations based on deception always do. Or Webb would have moved on to his next target, leaving Rachel devastated. Or their security violations would have been discovered through routine investigation. The ending was inevitable, only the timeline was variable. That's a very analytical view. It's the only view that makes sense. What about the emotional view? I considered. Emotionally? I'm grateful I found it when I did. 6 months of betrayal nearly destroyed me. 6 years might have made recovery impossible. And recovery? How's that progressing? You tell me. You're the intelligence officer observing me. She moved closer, not quite touching, but near enough that I could smell her perfume. Subtle, clean, nothing like Rachel's complex fragrances. I observe, she said, A man who's rebuilt himself professionally but is still reconstructing personally. Someone who wants to trust but has legitimate reasons for caution. A person who's choosing, consciously or not, whether to let past betrayal define future possibility. Accurate assessment. I also observe, she continued, someone I've grown to care about. Not because you're a brilliant security officer or because we work well together, but because even after everything, you maintained your integrity. You could have destroyed Rachel and Webb personally, vindictively. Instead, you handled it professionally, legally, ethically. That takes strength most people don't have, or emotional detachment most people wouldn't want. Maybe. But I see it as character. The same character that makes you stay late to ensure every security protocol is perfect. That makes you remember every subordinate's name and family situation. That makes you bring the right wine to dinner even when you're nervous as hell. You could tell? Intelligence officer, remember? You've checked your watch 3 times, adjusted your collar twice, and you're sitting at attention on my couch like it's a briefing room chair. I forced myself to relax, settling back into the cushions. Better? Getting there. She took my hand, the first intentional personal contact we'd had beyond professional handshakes. Jim, I need you to know something. I'm not Rachel. I will never be Rachel. I don't need excitement or escape or whatever Webb offered her. I need honesty, partnership, and someone who understands that service isn't just a job, but a calling. I know you're not Rachel. Do you? Because sometimes I think you're waiting for me to transform into her, to suddenly reveal deception or betrayal. You verify everything I say, double-check every story, look for inconsistencies that aren't there. I stopped. She was right. It's habit now. Operational security applied to everything. I understand, and I'm patient. But Jim, at some point, you either trust or you don't. There's no middle ground in relationships, no partial clearance for emotional access. You're asking me to be vulnerable again. I'm asking you to try. With someone who's proven herself, who shares your values, who understands your world. Not blind trust, earned trust. I looked at her. Really looked. 2 years of shared meals, conversations, crisis management. Not once had she lied, manipulated, or betrayed confidence. She'd been exactly who she claimed to be, consistently, reliably. Okay, I said. Okay. I'll try. No guarantees, no promises of immediate comfort, but I'll try. She smiled, squeezing my hand. That's all I ask. We talked until midnight, the conversation flowing easier as the evening progressed. When I finally stood to leave, she walked me to the door. Thank you, she said, for trying, for trusting even a little, for being human tonight instead of just Director Garrison. Thank you for patience. Jim? She stood on her toes, kissed my cheek. This isn't an operation. There's no mission objective, no timeline, no success or failure metrics. It's just 2 people seeing if they can build something real. I know. Do you? Because your analytical mind is probably already creating protocols and procedures for relationship management. She was right again. Old habits, I admitted, then develop new ones. Starting with this. Tomorrow night, you choose what we do. Something you want. Not something you think I'd want, or something professionally appropriate. Something purely Jim. That's challenging. That's the point. The next night, I took her to the Naval Museum after hours. I had clearance for private visits. We wandered among submarine exhibits, and I found myself sharing stories I'd never told anyone, not even Rachel. Close calls under Arctic ice, the strange beauty of underwater mountain ranges on sonar, the brotherhood of serving in a steel tube beneath the ocean. This is who you are, Sarah said, studying a photo of my first submarine crew. Not just what you do, but who you are. Part of who I am. The foundation part. Everything else built on top of this, the discipline, the security consciousness, the absolute dedication to mission. It's not a job, it's identity. Is that a problem? No. It's magnificent. Rachel wanted you to be someone else, someone without the protocols and discipline that define you. I want you to be exactly who you are, just with room for one more person in that identity. 3 months later, Webb made news again. He'd been arrested for fraud in his new civilian job, using his intelligence background to run investment scams. The pattern continued: exploitation, manipulation, inevitable discovery. He got 5 years federal time. Rachel sent me a letter when the news broke. Not email, not text, but an actual handwritten letter. Jim, I saw the news about Marcus. You were right about him, about everything. He was running an operation, and I was just an asset, not even a particularly valuable one. I'm writing to say you were right, but also to say I was wrong in ways I'm only now understanding. I blamed your military rigidity for our problems, but the truth is I was bored with stability and mistook chaos for passion. Marcus offered excitement that was actually manipulation, freedom that was actually control. I'm in therapy now, court-ordered from the security violation, but I would have needed it anyway. Learning about patterns, vulnerabilities, why I was susceptible to someone like Marcus. The answer isn't flattering. I wanted to feel special, chosen, elevated above the routine. Marcus made me feel that way, even though it was all technique, all false. You deserved better. You deserved honesty when I first felt dissatisfied, communication instead of deception, respect for the life we'd built even if I wanted to leave it. I know you've moved on. Sarah Blake is a good officer and, from what I've observed, a good person. She's what I pretended to be, genuinely committed to service, honestly dedicated to duty. You chose well, or perhaps you were chosen well. I don't expect a response. I don't deserve one. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I destroyed and why it mattered. With regret and respect, Rachel. I showed the letter to Sarah that evening. How do you feel about it? She asked. Validated, I suppose. The analysis was correct, the patterns identified accurately, the threat properly assessed. That's professional. How do you feel personally? Nothing. Is that wrong? No. It's honest. She's history, Jim. What matters is present and future. Agreed. Speaking of future, she pulled out a folder marked classified. Sarah, we agreed no work at dinner. This isn't work. Well, not exactly. Open it. Inside was a single sheet, joint assignment orders. We were being deployed together to head a new submarine security task force in Pearl Harbor. Same command, same mission, official partnership in every sense. Stevens pulled strings, she said something about not repeating history's mistakes, keeping strong teams together. You want this? Working together officially while whatever we're building personally? I want everything, Jim. Professional partnership, personal relationship, shared service, combined future. No compartmentalization, no separation between duty and life, complete integration. That's ambitious, dangerous, complicated? I was going to say efficient, she laughed. Only you would call a relationship proposal efficient. Is that what this is? A proposal? It's a declaration of intent. I intend to serve with you, live with you, if you'll have me, build something that honors both profession and person. Not marriage, not yet, but partnership in every meaningful way. I thought about Rachel's letter, her admission that she'd wanted excitement over stability. Sarah was offering both, the excitement of new assignments, new challenges, new horizons, but also the stability of shared values, mutual respect, absolute honesty. Yes, I said. Yes to Pearl Harbor or yes to everything. Yes to all of it. Professional partnership, personal relationship, integrated future, yes. She kissed me then, not the careful cheek kiss of months ago, but something real, committed, promising. We'll need protocols, I said when we broke apart. Of course you'd say that. Clear communication channels, defined expectations, regular security assessments. Jim? Yes? Shut up and kiss me again. I did. 6 months later, we stood on the deck of a submarine at Pearl Harbor, the Pacific stretching endlessly before us. Our new command was everything we'd trained for, protecting America's underwater arsenal, ensuring operational security, maintaining the silent service that kept the nation safe. Sarah wore commander's insignia and a simple engagement ring. Nothing elaborate, just a band with a small diamond, perfect for someone who valued substance over show. Any regrets? She asked, watching the sunset paint the ocean gold. About? Everything. The investigation, the divorce, the way it all played out. No. Every action was necessary, every consequence justified. Webb and Rachel compromised security through their choices. The response was proportional and professional. And personally? Personally, I'm grateful. Without their betrayal, I wouldn't have discovered your worth. Without that crisis, this partnership wouldn't exist. Silver lining to a nuclear cloud? Something like that. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, then recognized the area code. Rachel's parents' home. Jim, this is Rachel's mother. I wanted you to know Rachel was in an accident. She's stable, but hospitalized. I know things ended badly, but thought you should know. I showed Sarah the message. You should respond, she said. Not for Rachel, but for closure. I typed back, thank you for informing me. I hope she recovers fully. Nothing more was needed or appropriate. Rachel was part of history, a closed file, a lesson learned. The future stood before us. Submarine secrets to protect, threats to assess, a life to build on foundations of service and trust. Ready for tomorrow's briefing? Sarah asked. Always. Good. Because I have intelligence on a new Chinese detection system that's going to require complete restructuring of our security protocols. You know how to sweet-talk a security officer. Years of intelligence training. Know your target, exploit their interests, achieve your objective. Which is partnership, professional, personal, permanent. As the sun disappeared into the Pacific, I realized something had completed. Not just the cycle of betrayal and recovery, but the transformation from who I'd been to who I'd become. The Jim who'd found that hotel keycard would have seen only threat in new relationships. The Jim standing on this submarine deck saw possibility, promise, purpose beyond mere security. Rachel and Webb had taught me that trust could be weaponized, that love could be operational cover, that deception could wear the face of devotion. But Sarah had taught me something more valuable, that honest partnership was possible, that shared service could strengthen rather than strain relationships, that trust rebuilt carefully was stronger than trust given blindly. Jim, Sarah said as we headed below deck. Thank you. For? For choosing to rebuild rather than just survive. For letting me past your security protocols. For becoming the partner I needed, not just the officer I worked with. Thank you for waiting while I figured out how. Worth the wait. Roger that. We descended into the submarine, into the world we both served, protected, and understood. Above us, the stars emerged over Pearl Harbor, the same stars that had watched over military marriages for generations, some that survived, some that shattered, some that emerged stronger from the breaking. Ours would be the latter. Built on truth rather than deception, service rather than selfishness, partnership rather than mere passion. It wasn't the marriage I'd lost, and that was the point. It was something entirely new, entirely earned, entirely real. The submarine's hull hummed with power as systems came online for night operations. Somewhere in the Pacific, threats lurked that required our vigilance. Somewhere in America, citizens slept safely because we stood watch. And somewhere in a hospital bed, Rachel perhaps finally understood that the very protocols she'd resented were what had made our service possible, our clearances valuable, our duty sacred. But that was her story to resolve. Mine continued here, beneath the waves, beside a partner who understood that service and sacrifice, duty and devotion, protocol and passion weren't opposites, but complementary forces in a life properly lived. The security assessment was complete. The threats had been identified, contained, neutralized. The future was secured. Mission accomplished. But the real mission, the human one Stevens had spoken of, the one that required vulnerability and trust and the courage to risk betrayal again, that mission was just beginning. And with Sarah beside me, I was finally ready for whatever complexities it would bring. The epilogue, if there was one, wrote itself over the following years. Sarah and I married in a small ceremony at Pearl Harbor, Admiral Stevens officiating, our submarine crew in attendance. No elaborate reception, no extensive guest list, just the people who understood that our union was as much about shared service as shared life. Webb served 3 of his 5 years, released early for good behavior, but permanently barred from any position requiring trust or security clearance. Last I heard, he was selling used cars in Nevada. His intelligence training reduced to manipulating financing terms and trade-in values. The predator had become a parody of himself, using operational tactics to move inventory instead of classified information. Rachel rebuilt slowly. Without her clearance, the defense industry was closed to her, but she found work in civilian project management for a medical device company. No secrets to protect, no protocols to maintain, just straightforward business without the weight of national security. Through the professional network, I heard she'd entered a relationship with a fellow divorced project manager, someone as far from the military intelligence world as possible. Perhaps she'd finally found the normalcy she'd claimed to want. The Chinese submarine incident that had interrupted my first real conversation with Sarah became a defining moment in my career. Our response, developed jointly with Sarah's intelligence analysis and my security protocols, became the standard for Pacific Fleet operations. We'd turned a potential international crisis into a demonstration of American capability without firing a shot or compromising a single classified system. 3 years into our marriage, Sarah made a decision that surprised everyone except me. "I'm requesting transfer to training command," she announced over breakfast one morning. "You're leaving field intelligence?" Shifting focus. We've identified and neutralized dozens of threats, protected countless secrets, maintained operational security across the Pacific Fleet. But the real vulnerability isn't in our systems, it's in our people. Webb. Webb, Rachel, and a dozen other cases we've seen. Good officers, cleared personnel, dedicated servants who became vulnerabilities because they didn't understand how personal compromises become professional disasters. So, you want to teach? I want to prevent. Create training programs that help people recognize when they're being targeted, when personal dissatisfaction is making them vulnerable, when operational security is being compromised by emotional manipulation. The Navy might not see the value in that. They will when I present the cost analysis. Webb's investigation and court-martial cost $2 million. Rachel's security review and clearance revocation cost her company a dozen contracts worth $50 million. And that's just one incident. She was right, of course. The Navy approved her proposal within 6 months. The Blake Protocol, as it became known, became mandatory training for all personnel with security clearances. 2-hour sessions on recognizing intelligence manipulation in personal relationships, understanding emotional vulnerabilities that could be exploited, maintaining operational security even in intimate situations. I attended one of her first sessions, sitting in the back, watching her teach a room full of young officers. "The most dangerous threats," she said, "aren't the ones that come at you professionally. Those you're trained for. The dangerous ones come through personal channels: loneliness, dissatisfaction, the need to feel special or understood. Intelligence operatives, foreign and domestic, know this. They target the person, not the position." A young lieutenant raised her hand. "Ma'am, how do you maintain relationships when you're always suspicious of motives?" Sarah glanced at me before answering. "You don't maintain suspicion, you maintain awareness. There's a difference between paranoia and vigilance. Paranoia destroys relationships. Vigilance protects them. But how do you know the difference?" "Patterns," Sarah said. "Someone genuinely interested in you wants to know about your whole life, your family, hobbies, dreams beyond work. Someone targeting you for intelligence focuses on your professional life, your clearances, your access. They might seem interested in you, but they're actually interested in what you know or what you can provide." Another hand went up. "What if you realize you're being targeted after you're already involved?" "Then you have a choice. Protect yourself and national security by reporting it, or become complicit in your own compromise. The first option ends a relationship but preserves your integrity and career. The second might preserve the relationship temporarily but destroys everything else." After the session, we walked along Pearl Harbor's historic waterfront. "You're good at this," I said. "Natural teacher." I had a good case study. Rachel and Webb, you and me. How to build something real after betrayal. How to maintain security while remaining human. How to trust without blindness. We should be a training scenario. We are. Case study. 7. Successful partnership after security compromise. I changed the names and details, but the essence is there. What's the lesson? That recovery is possible. That betrayal doesn't have to define future capacity for trust. That with the right partner, proper protocols, and conscious choice, you can build something stronger than what was lost. 5 years after the keycard discovery, I received an unexpected visit. Stevens, long retired but still connected to the intelligence community, appeared at my office with a folder marked personal, not classified. Jim, thought you should see this. Inside was a newspaper clipping. Rachel had been arrested for embezzlement at her medical device company. Not massive amounts, but enough for felony charges. The details were painfully familiar. False expense reports, fabricated vendor payments, a sophisticated deception that had worked for months before discovery. Pattern behavior, Stevens said unnecessarily. She learned from Webb after all, just the wrong lessons. Or maybe she always had the capability and Webb just activated it. Some people are fundamentally honest until they learn to lie. Others are fundamentally deceptive and just need permission to embrace it. Which was Rachel? Does it matter now? He was right. It didn't. Rachel had chosen her path repeatedly, first with Webb, now with embezzlement. Each choice had been a step away from integrity, toward a life built on deception. Why show me this? I asked. Closure. Confirmation that your response 5 years ago was correct. She wasn't a good person who made one mistake. She was someone capable of systematic deception who would have eventually compromised you regardless of Webb. I'm not sure I needed that confirmation. No, but Sarah might. She's always wondered, hasn't she? Whether she benefited from Rachel's betrayal, whether you two would have found each other without that catalyst? He was right again. Sarah had occasionally expressed uncertainty about being the woman who came after, wondering if our relationship was reaction to betrayal rather than genuine connection. That evening, I showed her the article. She read it twice, then set it aside. I'm sorry, she said. For her. To have fallen so far, lost so much, learned so little. She had everything, career, clearance, marriage to a good man, and threw it away for excitement. Now she's throwing away her freedom for money she probably doesn't even need. Pattern behavior, as Stevens said. Yes, but also tragedy. She could have been excellent. Instead, she chose to be corrupt. You sound sympathetic. I am. Not for her choices, but for the waste. All that potential, all that capability, turned toward deception instead of service. You wouldn't have made her choices. No, but I understand the vulnerabilities that led to them. The need to feel special, the boredom with routine, the attraction to danger. I felt all of those things too, Jim. The difference is I channeled them into intelligence work, into authorized operations, into serving something greater than myself, and into us. Eventually, yes. But I could have been Rachel if I'd made different choices, accepted different offers, believed different lies. But you didn't. No, I didn't. And that's the point of the Blake Protocol, helping people recognize those choice points before they choose wrongly. The conversation shifted to operational matters, future plans, the endless business of maintaining security in an insecure world. But that night, as Sarah slept beside me, I thought about paths taken and not taken, choices made and unmade, the thin line between integrity and corruption. Rachel had crossed that line with Webb, then crossed it again with embezzlement. Each crossing had been easier than the last, the path of deception becoming more natural with practice. She'd started as a cleared defense contractor with a bright future and ended as a common criminal facing prison. Webb had crossed the line so many times it had ceased to exist for him. Every relationship was an operation, every woman a target, every interaction a manipulation. He'd perverted his intelligence training into a tool for personal gratification, and when that had been taken away, he'd simply shifted to financial fraud. Sarah and I had approached the line from opposite sides, she from professional intelligence work, me from personal betrayal, and chosen to stay on the side of integrity. It hadn't been easy or automatic. There had been moments when using our skills for personal gain would have been simple, when bending rules would have been profitable, when crossing lines would have been satisfying. But we'd chosen not to. Every day, in small ways and large, we chose service over self, integrity over advantage, truth over deception. It was a conscious choice, repeated endlessly, that defined who we were versus who we could have become. A month later, Rachel's trial made the news. She pled guilty, received 3 years federal time, and was ordered to pay restitution. The medical device company's CEO was quoted, saying they'd trusted her completely, never suspecting someone with her background could be capable of such deception. I wanted to tell him that background was irrelevant, that clearances and credentials didn't guarantee character. But that wasn't my story to tell anymore. Sarah's Blake protocol had expanded to all military branches by then, required training that had already identified and prevented 17 security compromises. Young officers learned to recognize the Webb pattern, the Rachel vulnerabilities, the 1,000 ways personal and professional could dangerously intersect. "You know what's ironic?" Sarah said one evening as she reviewed training statistics. "What?" "Rachel and Webb did more for military security through their failure than most people do through success. They became the cautionary tale that prevents others from making the same mistakes." Expensive lesson. All the important ones are. 10 years after finding the keycard, I stood in Admiral Stevens's funeral honor guard. He'd passed peacefully, his legacy secure, 40 years of protected secrets, trained officers, and preserved security. Sarah stood with me, now Captain Blake, her intelligence work having prevented 3 major security breaches in the past year alone. Rachel was somewhere in federal prison, serving her time. Webb had disappeared after his release, rumors placing him everywhere from Mexico to Montana, running cons and schemes until his past inevitably caught up again. But they were footnotes now, historical references in training materials, case studies in security failure. The damage they'd done had been contained, the lessons they'd taught absorbed, the threats they'd represented neutralized. After the funeral, Sarah and I walked through Arlington again, past the thousands who'd served with honor, who'd chosen duty over desire, service over self. "Any regrets?" Sarah asked, echoing her question from years before. "None. Not even small ones? Roads not taken, choices that might have been different? Every choice led here. To this moment, this partnership, this life. Regretting any of it would mean regretting where we are now. Even the pain? The betrayal? Especially that. It taught me the difference between real partnership and performed affection, between earned trust and assumed loyalty. Without that lesson, I might have spent my entire life not knowing what I was missing. So you're grateful to Rachel? I'm grateful for the clarity her betrayal provided. The distinction matters. We reached our car, the ceremony complete, the past honored and buried. But Sarah stopped before getting in, turning to face me with that intelligence officer intensity that still, after all these years, could see through any defensive protocol. "Jim, I need to tell you something." My operational instincts activated. Threat assessment, pattern recognition, anomaly detection. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right." "That's what I need to tell you." She took my hands. 10 years ago, you were betrayed in the worst way possible. Your wife chose another man, lied systematically, destroyed your trust in ways that should have been irreparable. Sarah, let me finish. You could have become Webb, using your skills to manipulate and control. You could have become Rachel, choosing deception as a lifestyle. You could have become bitter, isolated, incapable of connection. Instead, you chose to rebuild. Not just professionally, but personally. You chose to trust again, carefully but genuinely. You chose to risk again, knowing the potential cost. I chose you. No, you chose to be someone capable of choosing me. There's a difference. You did the work, took the risk, made the leap. And in doing so, you didn't just recover from betrayal, you transcended it. This sounds like a goodbye speech, she laughed. It's the opposite. It's a thank you speech. Thank you for becoming the man you are, for building what we have, for proving that betrayal doesn't have to be the end of the story. It's not a story. It's our life. Our life, she agreed. Our perfectly imperfect, carefully constructed, consciously chosen life. As we drove away from Arlington, away from the past and toward whatever future awaited, I thought about the journey from that Tuesday morning with the keycard to this moment. Every investigation, every confrontation, every moment of pain and recovery had been necessary. Rachel and Webb had thought they were running a sophisticated operation, but they'd really been running toward their own destruction. Their deception had seemed clever, but was ultimately transparent. Their excitement had seemed worth the risk, but had cost them everything. Sarah and I had built something different. Not an operation, but a partnership. Not deception, but radical honesty. Not excitement, but enduring purpose. It was harder to build, requiring more skill than any intelligence operation, more courage than any submarine mission, more trust than any security protocol could verify. But it was real. Tested by time, verified by experience, cleared at the highest levels of human security. The key card that had started everything was long destroyed, thrown away with the debris of a failed marriage. But what it had revealed about character, about choice, about the thin line between integrity and corruption, remained. In the end, that Tuesday morning discovery hadn't been a tragedy. It had been a gift. Not a pleasant one, not a desired one, but a necessary one. It had shown me who Rachel really was, who Webb really was, and most importantly, who I could choose to become. I chose to become someone worthy of Sarah's trust, capable of rebuilding after betrayal, strong enough to remain human despite having every reason to become otherwise. The mission, as I'd told myself years ago, was accomplished. But the real mission, the ongoing one of maintaining love, trust, and partnership in a world full of Webb-like predators and Rachel-like vulnerabilities, that mission continued. And with Sarah beside me, Captain Blake, whose intelligence work made my security work possible, whose honesty made my trust recoverable, whose patience made my healing achievable, I was ready for whatever complexities that mission would bring. The submarine service had taught me to run silent and deep, to navigate in darkness, to surface only when safe. Rachel's betrayal had sent me to depths I'd never imagined, through darkness I'd never planned to navigate. But I'd surfaced, stronger and wiser, with a partner who understood both the depths and the light. That was the real victory. Not the destroyed careers of those who'd betrayed me, not the professional success that followed, not even the new marriage built on the ruins of the old. The victory was simpler and more profound. I'd been broken and chose to rebuild. I'd been betrayed and chose to trust again. I'd been given every reason to become corrupt and chose to remain integral. In the intelligence community, we call that operational success. In the human community, we call it redemption. Either way, it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.